لحظة سرحان ممكن تسبب كوارث.
Welcome to this Safety Explainer. Today, we're breaking down one of the most common and, frankly, one of the most serious dangers on any construction site, struck-by hazards. So let's jump right in and find out what they are and why they absolutely demand our full attention. Okay, let's start with a number that really puts this all into perspective. 17%. Think about that. 17% of all fatal work injuries are caused by someone coming into contact with objects and equipment. And get this, more than half of those are direct struck-by incidents. So we're not talking about a minor risk here. This is a huge deal.
In fact, this risk is so significant that OSHA actually includes it in what they call the Focus 4. These are the 4 biggest killers in construction, right up there with falls, electrocutions, and caught in between hazards. Just being on that list tells you everything you need to know about why we're talking about this today.
So what is a struck-by hazard really? I mean, to stop these things from happening, we first have to know exactly what we're looking for. So let's break it down.
So here's the official definition for you. A struck-by hazard is any injury that comes from forcible contact or impact between a person and an object or a piece of equipment. The 2 words you really got to lock onto there are forcible contact. It's all about the energy, the force of that impact. Now, this is where it can get a little tricky, telling the difference between a struck-by and a caught-in hazard. But there's a golden rule, a really simple question you can ask. Was the impact alone the cause of the injury? If the answer is yes, you're looking at a struck-by. But if the injury happened because a person was crushed between 2 things, well, that's a caught-in. It's a simple little test, but it's so critical for reporting and, more importantly, for prevention.
Okay, so struck-by hazards generally fall into 4 main categories. And if you can get these 4 types down, you'll be way ahead of the game when it comes to spotting them on the job before anyone gets hurt. First up, we've got struck by flying objects. This is pretty much any time an object gets thrown, hurled, or otherwise shot through the air with force. So what are we talking about here? It could be a nail shooting out of a powder-actuated tool, a piece of a grinder wheel that just shatters and flies apart, or even just debris that gets propelled by compressed air. You know, these are high-speed threats, and they can come at you from just about anywhere. And if you think that sounds a bit extreme, listen to this real case from Osha. A nail from a tool went through a wall, traveled 27 feet, and fatally struck a worker on the other side. It's just a horrible reminder that the danger isn't always right in front of you. You've got to be aware of the entire work site.
All right, next up is a hazard that I think we're all pretty familiar with on a construction site. Struck by falling objects. It's exactly what it sounds like. Something falling from a higher level down to a lower one.
Yeah, this is that classic construction risk, right? A wrench dropped from a scaffold, a heavy load that slips from a crane's rigging, or even a piece of the building itself that just gives way. On a job site, you always have to remember that gravity is working 24/7. This incident right here is just a devastating example. A heavy stringing block, it was secured with electrical tape instead of the proper cotter key. Well, the tape failed, the block plummeted 90 feet, and it killed a worker standing below. It's such a stark reminder of how one tiny shortcut can have the worst possible consequence.
Okay, our third category is all about things that move in a pendulum motion. These are struck by swinging objects, and they almost always pivot from a single, fixed point. So just picture a crane lifting a heavy load. That load can start to twist and swing, and it can be totally unpredictable, especially if the wind picks up. It's the same deal with the cab of an excavator or a backhoe when it rotates. Anytime you've got a suspended load or heavy machinery turning, you have the potential for a deadly swing. And that brings us to our final category, struck by rolling objects. Now these are dangers that are moving on the same level as the worker, and they often have a ton of weight and momentum behind them.
So yeah, this category definitely covers things like trucks entering a work zone or heavy equipment backing up. But it's not just about vehicles. Think about materials, like pipes or cylinders or anything round that isn't properly chalked and secured. Because once those things start to roll, they can be almost impossible to stop. So now that we know what to look for, the 4 main types of hazards, let's get to the most important part. How do we prevent them? This is your playbook. What you need to do to stay safe out there. Look, safety is a team sport. It's a shared responsibility, and it all starts with these 4 basic actions. First, you have to be aware. Know the swing radius of that crane, and for goodness sakes, stay out of a vehicle's blind spots. Second, you've got to secure your stuff. Use nets for overhead work and chalk anything and everything that could possibly roll. Third, wear your PPE.
I'm serious. Your hard hat, your high-vis vest, they are your last line of defense. Use them. And finally, communicate. Never ever assume an operator sees you. Make eye contact and get a thumbs up before you get close.
And here is a gut-wrenching example of why every single one of those steps is so critical. This crane was overloaded. It was being handled by someone without enough experience, and it collapsed. It didn't just hurt the operator, it killed 2 other workers who were standing 30 feet away. Remember, a lack of training and bad procedures puts everyone on the site in danger.
Struck by hazards are a massive issue in the construction industry, a leading cause of really serious injuries and even deaths. So, to keep yourself safe, it is absolutely crucial to understand the 4 main ways they can happen. Let's break them down. First up, we've got the hazard of being struck by a flying object. This is a super common risk, especially anytime you've got power tools or pressurized equipment running on site.
So what exactly is a flying object hazard? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's when any object gets thrown, hurled, or shot through the air. You know, it could be a piece of material that breaks off from a machine, or maybe something gets ejected under power from a tool.
Let's think about some real-world examples you're going to see on a job site. Picture nails being fired from a pneumatic or powder-actuated tool, or those little shards of metal or stone that go flying off a grinding wheel. Heck, even a bolt that snaps under a lot of tension can turn into a dangerous projectile in a split second.
This shows a really tragic real-world consequence. In this case, a tool operator fired a nail that went clean through a hollow wall. That nail traveled 27 feet before it struck and killed a carpenter's apprentice. It's just a powerful, terrible reminder that the danger isn't just for the person using the tool, but for anyone who happens to be in the area.
Okay, the second category is being struck by a falling object. This is a constant threat pretty much anytime you have work happening at different heights on a site.
The really crucial point here is that difference in elevation. Anytime an object falls from a higher level, doesn't matter if it's from a scaffold, a roof, or off the end of a crane, and it hits a person down below, that's classified as a struck-by falling object incident. And man, this can happen in so many ways. Bricks or other materials can get knocked off scaffolding. A whole load can slip from its rigging and just fall from a crane. Or, it could be something as simple as a hand tool being accidentally dropped from an upper floor. This case right here really highlights why proper equipment checks are so critical. A stringing block was secured with electrical tape, not the stainless steel cotter key it was supposed to have. The tape stretched, the block came loose, and it fell 90 feet, striking and killing an employee below. Just a tiny oversight, but with an absolutely devastating result.
All right, our third category is being struck by a swinging object. Now, this hazard is most often tied to cranes and other lifting operations.
So, whenever materials are lifted by a machine, they can pick up momentum and start to swing or twist or turn and do it unexpectedly, catching workers completely by surprise. And this hazard also includes the entire swing radius of heavy equipment, where the rotating body of the machine itself becomes the danger zone.
You'll see this all the time with suspended loads, especially on a windy day. And the counterweight and the body of a crane create this dangerous no-go zone inside its swing radius. Even a long section of pipe can start swinging like crazy if it's not being properly managed with taglines.
The forces involved here are just immense, as this slide painfully shows. You had an inexperienced operator who didn't know the crane's limits, and he tried to lift a 20-ton slab at too great a radius. This put a huge twisting force on the boom, causing it to just collapse. It swung down and struck 2 workers, and killed them both.
And that brings us to our fourth and final category, being struck by a rolling object. Now, unlike falling objects, this hazard happens on the same level as the worker.
So the key distinction to remember here is that everything is happening on the same level. There's no falling component, no flying component. This hazard is all about being struck or run over by an object that's rolling, moving, or sliding on the ground, or whatever surface you're on. The most obvious examples are, of course, moving vehicles, trucks, cars, or those compacting rollers you see in a work zone. But it also includes materials that can roll, like a big pipe that isn't chocked properly and just rolls right off a stack. It could even be a piece of equipment on wheels that just moves when you don't expect it to.
So, how do you protect yourself from tons of moving steel? I mean, it's a serious question, but the answer isn't as complicated as you might think. It really comes down to a simple, layered defense system that's designed to keep you out of harm's way. We're going to give you a clear, actionable plan to stay safe.
All right, your first line of defense, and this is probably the most important one, it has nothing to do with gear. It has everything to do with where you are and what you're paying attention to. It's all about mastering your position and awareness when you're around heavy machinery.
Okay, these 3 rules, they are not suggestions. They're your absolute, non-negotiable lifesavers on a job site. You have to think of them like laws of physics. 1. Stay out of that swing radius. 2. Get that visual confirmation. Make eye contact so you know the operator sees you. And 3, never, and I mean ever, stand under a suspended load.
And this right here, it perfectly shows that number 1 rule. That whole area where a crane or an excavator can swing, you need to treat that as a total no-go zone. That machine is going to move, and it will not move around you. If you're not in the zone, you can't get hit by what's happening in it. It's really that simple.
So let's build on that. You've got your position locked down. Now, we move to the second layer of defense, making sure the machines themselves are operating safely around you and the rest of the crew. Now, here's the thing about this checklist. These aren't just passive things you look at. These are active measures of control. That backup alarm, it isn't just noise, it's a critical warning system for the entire site. Chalking the wheels isn't just a suggestion, it's you physically stopping gravity from turning a parked truck into a disaster. Every point here empowers you to control the risk. All right, so you're watching your zone, and you've made sure the equipment's safety features are good to go. But what if something totally unexpected happens? This is where your last resort comes in. Because when all those other layers fail, your final protection is what you're wearing.
And let me be absolutely crystal clear on this. Your personal protective equipment, your PPE, is your last line of defense, not your first. It's not some kind of magic force field. It's the gear designed to lessen an injury when your awareness slips or machine fails. It's essential, yes, but if you're relying on it as your main plan, you're setting yourself up to fail. Your hard hat, it's your shield against anything coming from above. Simple as that. Whether it's a dropped wrench from a few stories up or a swinging piece of equipment, your hard hat is that critical barrier between the object and a very serious head injury. And your eyes. I mean, just think about all the jobs that create flying debris. Cutting, grinding, nailing. Your sight is irreplaceable, and this simple piece of plastic is literally the only thing standing between a high-speed particle and your eye. High-vis vests. The goal here couldn't be simpler, but it is so vital. Make yourself impossible to miss. In the early morning, in fog, or just on a chaotic site, that bright, reflective material helps an operator's brain pick you out from the background noise, giving them that extra split second they need to avoid a catastrophe.
Okay, so let's pull all these layers together. We've talked about your awareness, the equipment's readiness, and your personal gear. Let's wrap this all up into a final, powerful action plan.
You know, the message from every safety expert is exactly the same. To protect yourself from these fatal hazards, it's not about luck. It's about a deliberate sequence of actions that you have to own every single day without fail.
And here's what it all boils down to. This is your personal safety commitment. For heavy equipment, master your zone. For vehicles, monitor the machine. For your personal safety, wear your gear. These 3 principles, zone, machine, gear, are your keys to going home safe at the end of every single shift.
Because at the end of the day, your safety is our concern. Remember those 3 words, zone, machine, gear. Make that your mantra on every job. For more essential safety guides like this one, be sure to follow and subscribe. Stay safe out there.